We have talked from time to time on the program, really most of the program. We have disagreements about the political views here. But one thing we have shared is our common concern, if not frustration, with the corruption in public government, the lack of transparency, the lack of requests for proposals, the inside deals, just all of the integrity issues. And it's, as Bill, as you and I have said on the air many times, upon that subject we agree. So I am really pleased that we have a special guest that we're going to interview now to discuss issues of integrity. Really a fascinating person and a fascinating development in Florida. So I welcome Dan Krassner from Integrity Florida.
Thank you, Bob. Great to be with you.
Nice to have you. What is Integrity Florida?
Integrity Florida is a government watchdog group made in Florida to tackle the issue of ethics reform. We need to accomplish ethics reform at all levels of government here in Florida.
We've had past efforts. I'm going to ask you about who we are as we go on with this, but just the first thing that comes to mind is I know we've had some really good efforts in the past, and in fairness to Governor Bush that I have criticized upon occasion, many occasions, he was instrumental in forming an evaluation type group. Tell us a little bit about that group, and then what came out of that. And then finally, who are we, the we forming Integrity Florida?
Sure. Well, Florida has had a lot of studies, a lot of good reports about the need for ethics reform. Governor Bush put together a commission. They put out findings that are still valid and important to look at today for policymakers. Governor Christ did something similar. But it's been nearly 45 years since the days of Governor Ruben Askew in Florida that there's been a serious discussion by our Florida legislature about ethics reform. Now's the time we need in the 2013 legislative session to pass comprehensive ethics reform to restore trust, because Floridians are starting to lose faith at alarming rates in their government officials. But ethics reform and more open government would restore trust.
You know, we've talked about it before, and people say, well, we need this, we need transparency, we really need to be more open. And the same sleazy stuff goes on over and over and over again. Right. So who is we? Who is we that formed Integrity Florida?
And I'll tell you the who. Our belief is that corruption does not like sunlight. And disclosure is the key to accountability.
Great.
And in full disclosure, I'll tell you my background. I worked in Tallahassee in senior management roles with the Florida Chamber of Commerce and Florida Tax Watch. I've also spent time working for various PR firms. My wife, Nicole, came up with the name Integrity Florida. She's been a partner with me since the start of this effort.
Oh, wonderful.
We have our first child is going to be due October 29th of this year, a little baby girl, so we're very excited, and that's our inspiration, to align our personal and professional missions, to get up every day and work for the good of Florida. As native Floridians, we love this state, but we're concerned about Florida leading the country in corruption.
How in the world did you put together or get people that shared this common belief and then, more importantly, agree to fund it? Because you got to have funding to do these sorts of things, and it doesn't have a high level of pizzazz. You know, you're revealing or coming up with proposals for transparency and that sort of thing. Well, people say, well, that's nice and whatever, but it's hard for people to reach into their pocketbook to try to support that. So who are these folks that agreed to do it?
Well, we can't afford not to pass ethics reform. We as Floridians are all paying a corruption tax. It's impacting our pocketbooks. When you have the politically connected companies getting the vendor contracts at all levels of government, that's increasing our cost. We have $50 billion a year in vendor contracts from state government alone, and the politically connected companies are getting those, and we're all paying more because of that.
They're not bid? These are not openly bid?
Some are bid, some aren't. We've been working with CFO Jeff Atwater on a new website called Transparency Florida. The goal is to put every vendor contract online, every penny of government spending at all levels online. I'd ask all viewers to, this election season, get every single candidate at all levels of office on record, because we're the boss, and say your job description is to put every penny of our money online, tell us how you're spending our money, put your emails and your documents online so we can see what you're doing. We've got to remember this is government of, for, and by the people. We're the boss. We're going through a hiring process this campaign cycle, but we need to change the job description and hold these folks accountable.
All right, let's back up a couple of steps and tell me, how you got people to support this idea. You got a board, apparently. You raised some money, and as I said earlier, it's pretty noble to think people are reaching into their pockets, or businesses are, to say we want an integrity aspect of government, integrity discussion about government. So I really would like to know who are these folks that have helped do this.
So Integrity Florida has an 8-member board of directors. Our model is based on a successful model of ethics reform in Palm Beach County that was a coalition that passed 3 local ethics reform measures in 2010, headed by a gentleman named Marty Rogel. Marty's on our board of directors. We also have another Marty, Martin Dykman, former associate editor of the St. Petersburg Times, on our board.
Know him well.
Rosemary Gaudreau, former editor of editorials of the Tampa Tribune. From Northwest Florida, we have Mike Hill, who's the president of the Northwest Florida Tea Party.
We all know him, too.
Definitely.
Sure.
Along with Marilyn Wills from Tallahassee, immediate past president of the League of Women Voters.
Excellent.
So we have a balance of all parties, independents, Republicans, Democrats. We have a former mayor of Gainesville, Pegeen Henrahan. But that's important. Corruption does not wear a party label. To tackle the issue of ethics reform, you have to get the partisanship out of the room. We have about 20 donors so far. Individuals that are backing this effort. We're applying for grants. We're partnering with Barbara Peterson at the First Amendment Foundation on open government initiatives.
Know her well, too. Great people to be aligned with, and they all have a common goal, which is this disclosure. I think the point that you made about disclosure as the key to this is really so important. And I'm not that enamored, to be honest, about this with the idea that Mr. Atwater is going to list things on his site, because really what we need to talk about, I would think, more is how do these vendors fairly compete for the state's business? And just to post that they've gotten a business, it's help. I mean, it's a help, no question about it. But how do you respond to that in terms of the fairness of competing for government business, which seems to me to be at the core of this?
Fairness is at the core of all these issues. I mean, we should have competitive bidding for every contract. I mean, any business in Florida that has the products or services that government needs should have a chance to compete for that business. That's not the case at all levels of government. There's still too much no-bid contracting going on.
Why is there so much? I could see maybe for some kinds of personal service, some highly specialized or esoteric area, you might be able to make an argument for it. But how do they end up getting all of these contracts out on a no-bid format? How do they pull that off, if you will?
Well, because it's been done in secret. Government information should be public information. But in this day and age, if it's not online, it doesn't exist. Governor Askew said you have to give the citizens the tools to hold their government accountable. Now the tools have changed. Now we have Facebook and Twitter and websites and various social media. It's time that our government, as the default, puts everything online. So mobile app developers can put information on our cell phones. Or we're trying to do that. We're trying to create Follow the Money Florida apps.
Good. That's great.
One thing I'd also like to mention, honored to be joined by Ben Wilcox, who came on board as our research director. Ben has been a champion for good government reform in Tallahassee, former head of Common Cause. When Ben was at Common Cause and I was at the Florida Chamber of Commerce, we didn't always work on the same side of issues. But that's what's great about working on ethics reform. Well,
you've seen it. I like it because you've seen it from the business side. You're balanced about this. I think sometimes we see sort of the parading do-gooders that have no understanding of the dynamics of business, the difficulties that small businesses are experiencing. And so coming from the chamber side, I think you have an appreciation for it, but you're not overcome by it or overwhelmed by it to the point that you buy whatever business says they need at the time.
Right. Well, I'm inspired by the fact that we in Florida, with 19 million residents, have an opportunity to have 19 million watchdogs. This is the Sunshine State. If we demand that our government does all business in the sunshine, whether it's their email or the spending or the contracts, and we as citizens do our part as watchdogs and take a look at it, and if we see wrongdoing or corruption, go to integrityflorida.org and let us know about it so we can put it in our research reports and expose the corruption.
One of the problems we've experienced locally is that in order to be an informed consumer, sufficient to question the conduct of government officials or contracting, whatever, takes a tremendous amount of time. and there is a concerted effort to hide the ball and to keep you from finding out what's going on. I know years ago, the League of Women Voters would send representatives to every single committee meeting and subcommittee meeting and everything where all the dirty stuff gets done because nobody shows up at 10 o'clock in the morning. People are working, they're at school, teachers are teaching, you know, life goes on. But the workers, to try to get the government deals, are there at 10 o'clock. So the League used to show up and they'd make notes and they'd file reports. But that was all on a volunteer basis. How do we as citizens, how can we become involved to make a difference when there is this organized effort to keep the citizens from finding out? I'm not saying just with the contractors. I'm saying people on the inside, too. They don't want a big light shining on all of government from the inside. How do you accomplish that as a private person?
We as a private group, I mean, as an independent watchdog group, we're providing more citizen tools to get the information to you in an easier format. For example, if you want to know the net worth of your legislator or the governor or the cabinet or their assets and liabilities, we've gathered all those financial disclosure forms so you can know where their conflicts might be, and we've put them online for the first time at integrityflorida.org. Hasn't been done before for the public to fully access the information to see if your lawmaker might have a voting conflict. Because right now they can vote even with conflicts. They can work for a lobbying firm.
Amazing. Amazing. You can start with this as a suggestion. My experience with these financial disclosure forms is they're written not to disclose. And it's almost accidental if you actually glean any meaningful information from it, and that these things are done with shell corporations, LLCs. They work through their wives and their brother-in-laws and their sisters. I'm not saying you can find out everything, but I think you could put together a committee of CPAs to say, draft us a good conflict of interest disclosure form, financial and otherwise, because we don't. My experience looking at these forms through the years has been, you get some information, you don't get it all, and it's really designed for the loophole by the people who designed it in the first place to allow a way out.
A basic improvement would be any financial transaction over $1,000 within a year should be disclosed, because there's insider trading going on. Our elected officials know where the roads are going to be built, so they buy up the land.
It happened here. It's happened here pervasively through the years. Inside tracks with congressmen in the past, interstate exits, the same thing you're talking about. I guess it happens all over the state, probably, right?
Here's what your viewers could do as a start. Go to integrityflorida.org. Go to our website and look at the financial disclosure forms. We have a way you can comment on those. So if you know that one of your elected officials has a piece of property they didn't disclose, type out the address and let us put a spotlight on it. You can do so anonymously if you want. Send us a tip. We have to be involved. Folks, around the community, we need 19 million watchdogs with our residents in Florida to help us, in every city and every county, know what's going on, know about deals. Send us emails and post those comments so we can gather the research and put those research reports out statewide.
Well, that's wonderful. What a great idea to allow citizen input. But I'll warn you about something, okay? If it gets good, you're going to get infiltrated by the people who do not want it to be good. I hate to be too cynical about this, but when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, and for example, we know contracts in Tallahassee where the people show up at the pay window to get their cash every year and have the power over legislators, representatives, and state senators, they're not going to give up easily. So I just caution you, be careful on who you let in the club. So if you have a problem with this organization, it will be a terrible disappointment to the people of Florida. And now it looks like a great hope for the people of Florida.
Definitely. And we want to, we're getting so many calls and emails from all around the state, from every city and county about corruption. Ideally, we'd like to see Attorney General Pam Bondi have a report corruption hotline. That way we can refer those calls there. We refer a number of calls to the FBI Report Corruption Hotline. We refer calls to the First Amendment Foundation to help folks with public records requests. And all those numbers are on our website, integrityflorida.org. Representative Gates here in the area is interested in trying to get a report corruption hotline passed,
Great.
along with some other ethics reform bills.
Good. Well, Don's president of the Senate this year, so that'll be really important. It's great that you've got him on board with this plan.
And Senator Gates has indicated support for ethics reform as well. The stars are aligned. Governor Scott ran on ethics reform, ran as an outsider to clean up Tallahassee.
And I think he's doing a great job in that respect because he's come through with it. And I understand, and we'll get to this now, that there is a legislative package that you're putting together that you hope that the governor will support and in some form and incur the support of the legislative leadership.
Exactly. There is a ground-up, grassroots movement building around Florida for ethics reform. We've had successful movements and passage of local ethics reform measures in Palm Beach County, and Broward County, and Jacksonville. We're meeting with groups passing local ethics reform in Port St. Lucie and Lake County, in the Panhandle and Okaloosa County. All these groups are going to come together by the legislative session and force the issue, demand ethics reform. And Governor Scott has indicated support. Senator Gates has indicated support. Representative Gates support. Representative McBurney out of Jacksonville. They're lining up to file the bills. We're going to have a session where we can finally get ethics reform done. If your viewers make it a priority, tell these candidates you want to see ethics reform. Get them on record now. Get them on your iPhone. Get them on your mobile device on camera. Get them on record.
I had a recent experience with the Florida Ethics Commission. Anecdotal, but it's pretty typical of my experience with them through the years. There was a controversy, a major controversy, so I assembled all of the newspaper articles that I could find on the controversy so that they would be adequately prepared to address this ethics controversy, and I sent them off. Then I got this rather abrupt, almost insulting letter back saying, we didn't ask for this, we don't want it, we can't tell you we're going to ever use it. Keep this for whatever you want to use it for. It's like, wait, you're the Ethics Commission. You're not concerned about ethics. Oh, well, you have to formally make the complaint. So I got the complaints out, the forms out. And I read on the form, you have to swear under oath, subject to the penalty of perjury, that you have personal knowledge. The whole thing's been designed to keep people from reporting serious ethical violations. In my view, the whole Ethics Commission has to be restructured or something. I kind of put you under the bus, I guess, on that comment, and I don't want to cause controversy for you, but my own experience with the Ethics Commission has not been good.
Well, nationally, Florida just received an F grade, a failing grade for ethics enforcement at the state level.
I did not know that.
This was by State Integrity Investigation, a collaboration between the Center for Public Integrity, Global Integrity, and Public Radio International. This is a separate group than Integrity Florida, but we're partnering with them, and we put their report card on our website, integrityflorida.org. It's important for us to know that Florida is not looked at as a place where state-level ethics law enforcement is happening at any meaningful level. And that's problematic. Florida leads the country in corruption. We're number one. That's not good.
No, it's not. I did not know that.
Florida had more federal public corruption convictions between the year 2000 and 2010 than any other state in the country. That's according to the U.S. Department of Justice.
That's not a wonderful quality for a state to encourage businesses to come here, economic development, and encourage our tourists to visit here. It's very sad. I did not know that.
And speaking of business, Forbes magazine labeled 3 Florida cities, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach, as part of their top 10 list of America's most miserable cities, and they cited our corruption problem. So you combine the leading the country in corruption, federal corruption convictions, Forbes magazine talking about Florida's corruption problem, an F grade by State Integrity Investigation. We're clearly the number one state for corruption. We can't stand for that. Florida's number one for our sunshine, for our beaches. We love this state. We have a lot of things to be proud of, but we need to become the state that's number one for open government, ethical government, responsible government, and accountable government. That's what we're focused on.
That's terrific, Dan. For those people who have just joined us, I'm talking to Dan Krassner from Florida, Integrity Florida. So we need to tell our viewers now as we wrap this up, how do they find out more about Integrity Florida? And I'll just say overtly, How can they help contribute? Because you have to have funding to keep going and to keep doing it, which I just think the whole thing is quite admirable, actually,
Sure.
and delighted that you could be with us today. So tell us again, how can people contact you and have input into Integrity Florida?
Well, thank you again for having me, Bob. I've enjoyed the time with you today.
Good.
At integrityflorida.org, you can sign up for our mailing list if you'd like to make a contribution to help us with our gas money back to Tallahassee and around the state so we can spread the good word about ethics reform and build this statewide movement. We'd be honored to have the support of your viewers.
Well, thank you so much. Dan Krassner with Integrity Florida, our guest.